There was a time when the world was alive, when the rivers sang and the trees spoke, when ancestors guided our visions of the future, and art was not separate from life. This time is always here. Welcome to Cosmology for Creators, connecting to the source of your creative vision, reweaving relationship with the web of life. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm on here with my dear friend Kate Munson.
Heard of them.
So Kate,
Oh my god. Heard of them? Ooh.
oh, very, yes, thank you. I didn't do your intro actually. It might be a little disconcerting if we start in this way. I
Let's
don't know.
start the intro.
Um,
Start the intro like this. This is much better. Yes.
okay. Oh, yes, yes. I think that
Drop
really,
into the
yeah.
seriousness of all
Mhm.
the things. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, this is Kate Munson. Kate Munson is, oh my God, what was that title that I gave you a while ago?
Oh, fuck. I don't remember, but it was good.
Mhm. Um, Partner
Where
in existential dread. Kate is a professional partner in existential dread.
or
So,
play or
or
playmate.
playmate, yes, yes, playmate may be more accurate. Is a recovering marriage and family therapist and recovering from being a therapist. Um, and a member of the Movement of Existence, Bree Greenberg's innovative framework for collective liberation, and has been my animist playmate for the past 6 years. Mhm. Oh no, the disappearing mustache! Oh, darling.
Only my whole hair would go away that quickly and that easily.
Never go.
We're here to explore the things that you are exploring.
Yes.
And all the things you want to bring out and into the world. Yeah.
I was thinking we could share screen and play the video of the letter, and you can also sense into what stands out, and then we could just talk about it.
Okay.
Here we go.
This is a call in to every artist envisioning collective transformation, to bring awareness to the systemic forces that shape the deep cosmology of your creations. We call your work imagination, as if it is an opposition to reality. But you play with the same substance that shapes culture, that through imagination, you can touch what is most real. At this time of interlocking systemic crises, climate collapse, political disintegration, and cultural unraveling, the necessity for the transformation of our collective cosmology has never been more urgent. Our society is reaching peak imbalance in so many ways. With millions of dollars spent in creating imaginal worlds in film and television to show us life force, beauty, power, the truths we long for in our daily lives, but which so often feel inaccessible. While simultaneously, we are grappling with AI and the shifting edge of what is a real act of creativity. Where is the human within the art making? And the dance between innovation and ecosystem impact. I see you, world weaver, in deep intimacy with your creative power. You know what is possible when you are in flow with your creation. Your art creates atmosphere, microclimates, a portal into different oxygen, a provocation into other ways of perceiving. You are using the subversive power of imagination to touch into the honesty of life, the complexity, the simplicity, the rawness of actual contact with what is human. Your craft positions you to birth new visions of embodied power, tapping into the heart space of the collective. Your work is an infusion of beauty that can pierce through distortion, a systemic attractor awakening us to the pulsing force that carries life. What keeps you up at night, my friend? Protecting the core integrity of your vision. You can feel that there is something forbidden in your expression of creative life force, which the collective simultaneously craves and banishes, removing it to the realm of fantasy when actually it is the foundation of all life. How do you secret octopus your way out of the box society has placed around creation? Do the polarizing narratives, the industry structures, the commodifications, and abstractions of consensus reality limit the full expression of your dreaming? You know about that deep place of creation. When something vital emerges, when the vision clarifies, when that which is beyond your knowing helps you pierce through to the core of your creation. How do you push against the edges of confining paradigms and cosmological censorships that hold back relationship to the actual reality of animate forces? That trees and rivers also have a consciousness, that the past is still what's shaping our perceptions. How do you hold the intimacy of human textures as society turns toward technological innovation? And how can your work be alchemy for culture in these places where we so desperately need honesty and the ancestral metabolizing of all that has been untouched in the collective? You know that mystery moves through your art making, that the more you deepen into mastery, the more your craft is in collaboration. The shamanic process expressing through your art invites you deeper. But that's exactly the place where turning towards the collective becomes complicated, because so many of us are cut off from a relational cosmology that shows us how to be an agency with wider forces. I invite you to join me in birthing a new cosmology for creators. This is an invitation to step inside the deeper conversation, receiving support from the animate presences of ancestors and ecosystems, perceiving relational fields as an embodied reality, holding a field of integrity within systems of domination. We need creativity to remember where it comes from, to feel itself as ritual for regeneration. We need to connect from these deeper places with each other, not just for our personal transformation, but for where we are as a collective. Find the spaces where your work can expand within these wider contexts. Invite your creative collaborators to sense into this with you. Let's ripple out this invitation to all the places it is needed to shift cosmology within creative industries, creating art as alchemy for collective transformation.
Okay.
One of the things that I really noticed this time, I think I noticed it the first time too, is the tenor of your voice. There's something deeper and more present at the front of that voice, and I still hear the you underneath at the same time. There's an absolute call, just even in the tenor, even without the words. There's an invitation for every single artist who comes across this to feel into their own process and what that means. But there's also an invitation for the artist that is still working in all of those realms, but may not be aware that that's what they're doing.
What felt really important is that it was an evocation of what I know that artists already know, and that the people whose art I deeply resonate with, people who have that attunement to craft and to mastery, can't help but have this deeper connection with the mystery, with spirits of the land, with ancestors, and that it's just about the mediating frameworks and the ways of allowing that connection to really kind of ripple out and circulate in the ways that humans and spirit and ecosystem have been in relationship for all of the time we've been a species. And so for me, the river that I'm next to is the Mississippi River. And for, I don't know, maybe like 7 years now, I've lived in homes that have always been near the river. And there's just been this way that that being has guided my evolution and taught me how to flow and unfurl and touch my own vastness, and every year watching the river freeze and then the process of thaw happen, and just that body that is water. And then where I live now, I'm right downstream from a dam, and so that part has always been potent as I've been doing this work around what needs to be undammed and opened in the culture. But how do you do that in a way that doesn't overwhelm people's consciousness? Because just like with the way we've put in dams in how we now live in houses that are in one place, the river restoration and the process of actually getting back to an organic flow has to happen through titration and through a balance of what is stationary, what is here, and what wants to move differently. And so the place that I go out to record things and to speak to the land is between the river and this ancient cottonwood, who is these 4 different massive trunks pointing in different directions. And that cottonwood has also been someone who's followed me from like one place I've lived to another place I've lived. She's held such softness at the same time as just this absolute massive strength and presence and rootedness. And I feel like she's just really called me in as a creator, as a facilitator through my own shamanic process. And this vision that I've been incubating in the 3 years that I've lived here, that's evolved in so many different ways, from meeting sensitivity and ritual consciousness and maturation and developmental process, and then bringing in the art making. And like, she's just been there for it all as this anchor and holder of my vision and co-instigator of it, that what it really felt in the speaking of the letter and the desire for the letter to spread and to ripple out to all the places it's needed really feels like it's also coming from her root system. It's me, but it's also these land beings who are wanting us back in connection and needing the humans to be the bodies that are holding that and moving with that and speaking that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just thinking about the dance that creates and allows for, and how there is such a strong desire for those beings to be having this visual of like being at a prom, and they're all standing there just waiting for somebody to ask them to dance, and waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's it's very sweet to be allowed onto the dance floor again.
It was interesting when I recorded it because it was twilight on Samhain and drizzling rain, and like really, I thought I was kind of insane to go out, and I didn't have a tripod with me. And so I was just like, I don't know if I'm gonna, if this will work or not. But the cottonwood and the river really wanted to hear it, and that wanted to be the first step before I shared it. And I found an app on my phone that could become a teleprompter. And the cottonwood, there was a place where she could hold the phone, and I could stand there, and then the river was there. And when I did a couple takes, and my dog kept interrupting, hence the outtakes. But then there was one take where I started speaking and it started flowing, and I put my hands on her bark. So I was standing and the camera had my head and torso, and my hands were just able to be connected. And so when I was speaking, I just did the whole thing in one take. Afterwards I edited a little bit for rhythm, but it all of the words came out continuously. And my hands were with the cottonwood, so it really felt like we were both speaking. And so it feels like that kind of channeling quality to the voice and to the sharing of it.
Yes, and what I really noticed towards the end is when you turn the camera and the backdrop is the tree.
Mhm.
That was particularly potent to be able to see the texture and feel the girth and the width and the depth of that being with you.
Yeah, my dog was completely quiet until the very end, and then she was barking a little bit. And so when I turned, it was because she was jostling me. But I love that. That made me so happy that it was like, oh, now actually this whole tree has been here the whole time. And then here's the river again.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is that you were collaborating the whole time with them. The video, in a way, showcases exactly that piece that you are pointing to consistently again and again and again, bringing those beings to life, giving them a voice, giving them the stage. Um, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And there's even something about, the weather. The weather was a
Yeah.
piece too. Yeah, the whole thing.
It was interesting because it ended up, just because of how things unfolded, being during sunset. So it was the day of the year when the veil is most thin, and at the thinnest time of the thinnest day, right? Right at that hinge point. And by the time I finished, and you could tell like the lighting shifts, so like by the time I finished, the sun was pretty much down. And then it was also like, okay, I guess I only get one take of this.
That's right. It's
It
only
only
one day.
happens once.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Which I think speaks to working with the quote unquote elements versus working against them,
Mhm.
or trying to they were working with you. Yeah. Yeah, there's a collaboration in there. Very sweet collaboration. Um, I guess I'm thinking of the idea of a muse as well, and how, you know, obviously for generations and centuries, nature has been a muse, but it's been a muse in a way in which it's still separate
Mhm.
from us, which is um, which is not real, right? It's even as we get touched by, Mary Oliver talking about wild geese or whatever. Um, it touches a place of longing in that wanting that connection and being able to get a glimpse of it through her words, for example. But there's still, because I think what you're pointing to is something that is far more reciprocal, far more engaged than what we've seen for ages.
Yeah, it feels like it's so much about nature beings having their own consciousness and guiding human process and being creating in a way that also includes the well-being of the ecosystem, which is a very, 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 very complex thing to do at like this scale and phase of globalization and so many of these structures that have been disconnecting things for so long. But just that primary reconnection to actually feel like there is a direct relationship with the consciousness of a particular tree or a particular river or a mountain. Um, and when I look at, different film and television creations, like how often is nature the backdrop? And even in like a really heightened emotional scene where the vista or the trees that are there are kind of part of it in some way, how often are those different kinds of consciousness actually included as characters and parts of the narrative? And do you see humans actually in a relational learning process with the ecosystem? I think that like those are things that I'm really curious to invite shifting around. A lot of what happens in the systemic constellation work that I do and the ancestral healing processes, are that often we'll bring in nature as an ally, as a resource, if the family has been really entangled and there's trauma that's stuck in the system, or bring in the deep time ancestors who have that actual connection to land and to place that's in reciprocity. And I think that's like such a big part of the cosmology shifting, is that there are these other ways of being in relationship that original peoples know that indigenous cultures still have today. And that as people in modernity, in consensus dominant reality, when we gate those out, that's so much of what then leads to the lack of ability to imagine regeneration and sustainability and what it would be to create a society that's actually in ethical relationship with life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the words that come are, it's nature as an actor, nature as a character, nature as not a backdrop, not a set, not something that you manipulate to create the mood. Yeah, there's something about listening into the mood that's already there, and working with that. There's something about what you said in the video about, we're creating consciousness, we're creating culture moment to moment to moment. I'm no expert in film or entertainment, but watching the trajectory of where we are and how there's a lot of repetition. And even in that repetition, there's still kind of a longing for a storyline, a mythos, an archetype, which again never puts the very thing that gives us life in the center. And thinking about how there's a massive shift here available to the artist, the actor, the industry to invite in an entire ecosystem that has been relegated to, set design rather than having input into storyline and into the very creation of whatever piece of art is being formed. Even just that invitation. I'm thinking about people who are new to the idea of animism and the idea of consciousness, and consciousness in a way that we don't normally think of.
Like beyond human brain.
Yeah, right. Beyond the way that we think about it or have been trained to think about it. I'm guessing that in this invitation, there are people who don't have a practice like yours, don't have a relationship in that way that they know of. And but that the message that you are broadcasting still touches something in them, that it ignites. Artists are generally people who have a sense of curiosity that gets cultivated over time. And I'm thinking about inviting how you would invite those people in to explore with you if they don't have that as part of their base.
What I'm finding, and this is kind of what I was speaking to in the letter also, is that I think a lot of people already have a knowing or some sort of forming connection that's present. They just don't have a context for it. When I speak about cosmology, like that's what I'm talking about, is that sense that if you have a kind of permission and relational welcoming of a way that you naturally are sensing, then that can really land and touch more things and become much more settled in your beingness. When you're doing things but you don't know if you're alone in doing them, you don't know if are you crazy to be sensing in this way, to have your great grandmother sending you dreams, or to have one tree in your neighborhood who you touch every time you walk by. And so there's just a huge part of the cosmology work which just for me is about just welcoming all of those ways that we already have of sensing and being in relationship, and being like, yeah, that's normal. That's actually the baseline of how humans relate to the world. And the dominant modernity structures are what has narrowed that for us. And the other thing that I find is that, and this is a big part of why I'm so excited to work with artists specifically, is that artists already have systemic sensing online. Actors, directors, writers, painters, poets, like everyone who is playing with these mediums of expression that are holding a moment and amplifying it and finding its beauty and finding its tension and creating from it, they're already sensing from the field. Just in the same way as like when you walk into a room after an argument, you can tell that the air feels tight. And so giving artists a place for that to land and allowing that to be part of the base and the foundation that they create from, I feel like has so much potential to shift our ability to look at collective layers and look at how the stories that people are already having the impulses to tell connect to these deeper patterns and are really already rituals, are already forms of alchemy to shift consciousness around these patterns. And so bringing in systemic constellations work and field sensing work and the ritual resonance with animate forces, with ancestors, with nature beings, it gives it a place to land back in circulation with the wider world. And I feel like that's what we actually need for shifting culture and for transformation to happen, that doesn't just stay in that box of entertainment or imagination.
Mm-hmm. Mm. It just makes me think of it's a deepening and a widening process, and it's an invitation to something that's been here forever. It's been here longer than we've been here. Um, that's the other element, is that, quote unquote, nature has been making art since long before humans ever came on the scene. And there's a way in which we recognize that intuitively, just like you were describing, the tree that you can't not touch every time you pass it, or the way in which you notice the way that that tree holds each season. Um, and it feels like there's a permission piece in here
Hmm.
as well, around there's a permission piece that I think has been coupled with uh, it can be coupled with the resistance because of decades and lineages of being taught to think of everything else as something that's separate. And yet everything feeds us. Everything is generative. Everything is in constant concert with us. And how even just that permission and or stepping into a consultation with you around, here's the project I'm working on that I might feel stuck in. How can I bring in the other forces, the other elements, the other entities to inform the creation of whatever it is that's in front of me that wants to be born?
Yeah, again, like the thing that I keep discovering as I'm starting to play with people, and this is part of why I really want to bring the cosmology calls to a wide range of artists in different mediums of creation, is that the pattern that I keep tracking is that that sensitivity is already there. And those different affinities to trees, to mountains, to particular places of land, to particular ancestors, they're already there. As I'm listening to people talk about their projects, I'm hearing them. And it really is just the permission piece for that to be more explicitly included, even if that's not public facing, even if the rest of the creative team doesn't know that's happening, but for the person to be able to carry the work that they're doing as a ritual and as an alchemy process, and to enter into full animate relationship with those forces. Each of us is rooted and sourced from a particular cosmology. And some of those are more steeped in modernity and domination and these kind of punitive, competitive structures. And some of those are sourced from places where it really is about organic relationship and emergence and the human in that wider conversation that is many generations deep. And that when your cosmology shifts into that wider conversation, it's actually like an energetic field around you that you can then hold as it sources from that deeper place. You can hold that cosmology even when you walk into a production meeting, or you're talking about ratings, or you're in the nitty gritty money conversations that are reducing things back to that really flattened level, when you can hold the field of the wider cosmology, that travels with you and that opens up other possibilities, other ways to breathe, other kinds of space. And whoever is interfacing with you will have their own response to it. It has a catalytic effect and it allows you to play multiple games at the same time and to not be collapsed by the systems of domination, to still be able to hold your own reality as you're interfacing with them. And over time, the more people who can source from those deeper cosmologies, which includes really knowing who the deep time ancestors are who are loving you and are dreaming through your creations, and knowing who those nature beings are that are supporting you, it starts to ripple out. And to me, that is what ritual does. That is what alchemy does, because it's the same. Imagination and story are made of the same energetic material as the field of the culture. So there becomes this direct shifting process and this changing of tone. And that's what I really see being able to ripple out differently as people connect and are bringing in creations that are sourced from that deeper cosmology.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's something about when you're partnered in that, that there's a different way to meet the consensus reality, a different there's more possibility, there's more room for different responses while you are still um, walking through what's typical.
And on a really basic level, your nervous system is no longer co-opted by the things that make you collapse, the things that are trying to recruit you into shame or recruit you into a kind of narrowing, because you have this ability to come back into alignment. And so it creates a whole different way of holding space in the world.
Yeah, which can shift, ripple. It can ripple through so many different, and ultimately reach the people who are partaking of what you've created and can inform them and infuse them in a completely different way.
Yeah, which is another huge part of it, is the audience piece, is that as audiences, which I definitely experience and being someone who loves watching film and television and like really receives a lot of nourishment from those realms. And like in my childhood, like different theater performances I saw were massive anchors to my sense of identity. It's like the edge of where the artist is able to sense into ripples back to the audience. And that permission also ripples.
Yep.
And so I think there's this, what I'm really interested in is this parallel process where as the artist is widening into this deeper cosmology, there are also parallel conversations with how are we seeding this in the culture also as a consciousness shift, in really tangible ways, like supporting river restoration projects and land rematriation and permaculture gardens and things that actually anchor us back into deeper relationship with the land. And then things like the movement of existence and systemic constellations work, ancestral healing work that are supporting people in their daily lives in moving from a sense of more connection and more agency. Because it's all part of one circulatory system. And it almost feels like part of what I'm doing is like there's this lever that has been pushed in one direction towards art as this escape from reality, as something that is either the place that we go to still see things that are beautiful, that we feel like we can't access in our lives, or the place that we go to kind of dissociate and forget what's actually happening in our lives. Um, and my sense is part of what it means to bring us back into reciprocal relational feedback loops, into those self sustaining ways of being with the earth and with culture, is it's shifting that movement so that the art really becomes an ignition of our life in a different way.
Yeah, it becomes generative.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And instead of the art or the entertainment being as a means to escape, it's a means to actually engage more completely in actual life.
Yeah.
Oh. And not, it makes me wonder about, because in lots of ways we've learned to use entertainment as a means to disassociate, as a means to escape from all the systems that make life not life, and how using this and creating a different relationship with the land and all the other beings, it becomes an invitation into actual life, into actual existence. Which, as you were saying earlier, is a way to foster that existence in such a way that when the world, when consensus reality does what consensus reality does, there's a way to be in it instead of needing to disassociate from it. There's a way to claim it.
Yeah. Because it's the, I mean, current favorite deceased lady novelist Dorothy Sayers, um, who tapped me on the shoulder with her book, The Mind of the Maker, which is about creative process. She goes into a whole thing about the special role of the artist within culture and like what we endow artists with as these beings who have this different
Right.
connection to creativity. But then there's the other layer that's in all of us. And what the hell are we doing as a culture when only some people get to express from that? But we all have our own direct relationship to our expression that wants to emerge in some way. And in shamanic cultures, so much of that widened cosmology and the sense of animate forces is about that each of us have those beings of affinity. Each of us have particular ancestors, particular nature beings, particular archetypes and spirits that are dreaming through us and collaborating in what our gifts are, what we're here to embody in the world. And my own experience with stories has been that they are the place that will often ignite in me my awareness of that connection. There'll be a particular character that I just fall in love with, or a particular story or atmosphere that I'm craving. And I've been in this whole process, which is a lot of where this body of work came from, of giving myself permission to actually receive whatever it is I have that deep connection to, which often feels like it's completely out of reach. Reclaiming trickster energy through Loki in the Marvel television show is like a huge thing for me. And Loki, the Norse being, is now one of my main allies. And that really would not have happened without Tom Hiddleston in that way, without him being able to just hold the presence of that being and the whole whole journey over so many years with this character that then ended up opening to this place where this completely different texture of humanity and self-acceptance and relationship could come in. And River's song from the sci-fi series Doctor Who has been another massive inspiration to me around what it's like to hold power as a woman and just move through the world with a kind of warmth and subversive playfulness, which infuses everything about how I embody as a facilitator and as a practitioner now. And yeah, so much of what I'm curious about is it's like I already see the places where that those ignitions are possible. And in making them more fully conscious, both for the artists and for the audience, I think that things which are almost able to open and almost able to connect can really like fully land where they're supposed to. That's my sense.
Yeah. And I'm just really aware that there's such a massive craving for what you're describing,
Mhm.
um, from every body. Um, I mean, it can be something as simple as I identify with this character, right? Yeah, there's something about seeing yourself in the other being, and
And that
yeah,
they really are a being. Like that's the secret, which
yeah,
a lot of the
yes,
artists already know. Like that's
yes,
I know
right,
that. I've grown up in relationship with artists and like immersed enough in those worlds that like I've seen that happen and I see that happen in interviews and conversations is like you know that the being that you're embodying is actually has preferences, has ways of
right.
looking at the world, and that in that artistic collaboration between human and spirit, like the spirit part has its own awareness. And yeah, but it's there's this taboo around that because of the witch burnings, because of the banning of ceremony, because of all of the layers in European Enlightenment that have banished those animate ways of relating, where you're not really fully allowed to claim that. And then I think there's a way that the audience doesn't fully get that landed either, because often that's the thread that they're invited to pick up is what is their own spirit relationship with that being also.
Yeah, and then there's them connecting with it, but not really understanding what that connection means,
Mhm.
and being able to, again, there's just a lot of permission pieces in here. There's all these doorways that are like the door is wide open, but people are like, oh, am I allowed to go through the threshold? Yeah,
And what
yeah,
does that look like for me to claim that relationship,
yes,
that started as an imaginal input and
right.
actually find how that is tangibly embodied in my life? Because often I think if that shift into tangibility doesn't happen in some way, like a lot of what I've been playing with is taking those deep relationships and then expressing them myself through some form of art making or through,
Mhm.
the projects or the relationships that I'm engaged in, like finding what that claiming of it is. Because otherwise it almost stays as this sort of addictive longing.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Yes,
we
exactly.
project onto the movie stars and the celebrities like the thing that we're still holding in vacancy because we don't, which is, I mean, this is a whole wider cosmological philosophical layer of things that I'm still like beginning to unpack, but there's a whole piece about how these embodiments of creative power are things which in smaller communities like we would actually receive from each other in direct like in-person daily relationship, and there would be different people in the community who were holding those layers. And because we're in this kind of weird globalized structure now where so many of those intimate feedback loops have been cut, it's, they're these kind of rare people who we've sort of pedestalized into being able to hold those energies. And so there's an amplification, in the technological forms that allow us to see them and connect to them. But then it's kind of even harder to then claim them as our own because the distance is further. And there's not a reciprocal seeing of us. So then that's the whole other layer.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's like we've been doing this in silos for so long.
Yeah.
Um, and if we just reached out and touched the sides of the silos and realized, oh, there's an entity here too.
Yes, it's all one web. It's actually a whole honeycomb structure that is all interconnected.
Yeah, there's something about this. I keep coming back to the word permission, which it
Mhm.
feels like is important. And it's permission that's already been granted. It's permission that's been never needed to be granted all at the same time. It's both those things, and it's generally a human threshold. Um,
Well, and I think we confuse permission with seeing. Like, I think that's actually the part that
yeah,
we're often so caught up in the sense of needing to be given permission. And I mean, for like European lineage people, there are all these other layers to it because there's, the cultural disconnection from animacy and shamanism. And so there's also the fear of appropriation and not having lineages that actually, can transmit that knowledge to us in a way that is ethical. Um, and so there are those things, and then there are also just the lack of being seen. I think a lot of where we are entangled in permission is that there's a need to just be seen, you know, in our expression of what we know, so that it can, let's go back to the movement of existence work, so that it can actually exist. We can have the relational existence as well as the primary contact with it.
right.
And to be seen by someone who holds a field that's wide enough so that you don't have to contort or collapse in that seeing. And I think
Exactly.
that's the silo part. That's the part where it gets so complicated when we have these frames around creative process, because it cuts certain parts of it off.
Totally. Yeah, and there's something about the fact that my sense is that the seeing is happening all the time. And it's not the permission to see it, it's the permission to continue to see it and continue to engage with it in a way in which it's quote unquote real. Feels like a big piece there.
Which was a very potent and long conversation that went
Ah,
in many
no,
different directions. Thank you.
no, it's really good.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that's still being generated. I mean, I can feel it.
Hmm. I think there will be other installments of this conversation that
Oh,
will.
well, I mean, of course, it's us. That's going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah. I mean, there's a very basic, very, very basic, like even just the invitation. I mean, I'm not saying anything that either one of us don't know very intrinsically at this point. There's just a very basic invitation to exist,
Hmm.
which is one of the big thresholds that is can be really hard for people to allow themselves to have in some ways, because when you do that, then you take the next step. I mean, artists in general have already kind of crossed that threshold in some way.
In some way, but I think in other ways that's a huge part of it too, is that
Yeah,
they've crossed it in their art making.
exactly. That's what I'm trying to say, but
Yeah.
not their actual life,
Yeah.
right? entirety of their lives, but they have a taste of what that's like.
Yes.
And in a way, they're already touching. I mean, they're already touching the things. There are, if you've created something, you've already done this dance, whether you know it or not. You've already done it.
And I think that's really what the letter is speaking to is the
Yes.
part of artists that already know that another way of moving through the world exists
Yes.
and inviting them into the widening around that because I think there is like I mean I felt it. I write about this in an essay I'm going to publish in a couple days, like the bafflement of having touched creative power and seen people in raw honest expression of the full potency of being human, and then why the fuck is that not the baseline in our daily reality? Like why is that so rare?
Again, I mean,
And
it should be again and again. It should happen all the fucking time.
yeah,
Mhm. It should
yeah,
be like a pulse.
yeah.
It should be like a breath. It should be,
And that, like, that's the
yeah,
paradigm shift. That's the cosmology shift is like,
yes.
art is not meant to be a replacement for reality. It's not meant to be the thing that, like, gives, like, drip feeds us what we actually need to be the groundwater. And
Right.
once you've touched that place of potency, you have a sense of that. So it's just about the reweaving and the recirculating.
Right. And coming back to it again and again and again. It's like coming back to the well,
Yeah.
right? For the water. It's not something that there's something about taking it out and into the world. Once you've gotten the water, you take it out and then you come back and yeah.
And I see artists, especially actors who are embodying these roles that have that potency. I see them struggling with this in fan interviews, or panel conversations, or like when the audience is asking them questions and like trying to touch somehow that sense of like what they invoked.
Yeah.
But there's just not there aren't channels for it within consensus reality.
And the languaging isn't there.
Yeah. And
It has
so
shared language, which doesn't exist in some ways.
and so I see them trying to like give it back to them, to like hold the mirror back and be like, this is in you also.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all fucking artists. It's not a special box that you get to be put into. Yes, there are people who are in tune with whatever it is they're channeling. And it doesn't mean that the average person who's literally just walking down the street breathing isn't doing the same thing. It's just not hanging on a gallery wall or playing in a movie theater down the street. Yeah. And there's just a huge invitation to play in all of it.
Yeah.
Huge invitation to play because, and that's the other thing that, I mean, I can feel it. There's just this huge ache in the earth, in these beings that are like standing here, like I said, waiting to be asked to dance, just waiting to be engaged with in a way that is so simple and so sweet and so true and real. And most people can't delineate between animism, which is something that is forever old,
Mhm.
and then the white lighting and the new age surface disassociation piece that we've gone back and forth in this conversation about. It doesn't actually touch a thing, and it's act well, this is a whole nother conversation.
I think the piece about that people's banishing of things they call woo woo, like
Yeah.
too spiritual, too blah blah, bypassy, all of it. Like so much of that, I think, is that cross wiring of the, the version of spirituality that is disembodied and is not in honesty with ecological relationship and
Right.
being in a body and, just the like ordinary layers of life that are also incredibly important.
Practicalities, yes.
Yeah. And so people don't know there's another option, that it's not just consensus reality or something that totally bypasses that, that there is actually a interweaving that is like looking at the whole cloth of reality.
Right. Right. And that's the thing is, well, that's just going back to the ways that humans get lost in duality and think it's this or this and there's nothing in between.
Instead of ending in a random cliffhanger. Kate, thank you so much for you're so serious now. And also tired.
Yes.
I don't know that we need this closing. Anyways, thank you. It was really lovely to talk with you.
Always lovely to talk with you. And I'm sure we will do it again.
Yes. Okay, goodbye. There we go. Okay. Yes, yes. All right. I don't know how much these are going to go in the outtakes and how much these will go in the actual video, but we shall see. But thank you. You have caught on to the most important thing, which is that anytime I do a video, there have to be outtakes.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh my God.
What?
I had the screen in front of me, so I wasn't able to see the full effect of what you have going on.
Oh yeah, it's very fancy, isn't it? It could be. Ooh. Do you want to see?
You've got eyebrows and you've got lipstick. You've got the whole.
I know. I'm really working it.
Really.
I think I need the full costume here. Let's see.
Oh my God.
All right. Yes, this is how I shall start all of my podcast interviews. Yes. Darling. Now tell me, darling, about animism, darling. What do you think about animism, darling?
Oh my God. This is like ab fab for animists. I want my mustache to be as dark as my eyebrows. Why can I not do that?
Okay, this is probably enough footage.
You think? Enough of that.
Thank you for listening to Cosmology for Creators. May any nutrients ripple out to all the places they are needed. You can continue the weaving by following this podcast and my Substack, Earth Poet Edgeweaver, or visit my website, cosmologyforcreators.com, to learn more about my practice.